Welcome to In the Flow, where we explore how marketing leaders leverage operations to eliminate chaos and capture opportunity. I'm Anthony Welgemoed, CEO of Ziflow. Alicia, welcome and thanks for joining me on the pod today. To give a bit of context for our listeners, Alicia is what I'd call a true expert in creative ops. It's a function we talk about a lot, but more often than not, it's carried out by people with completely different job titles. Alicia is one of the rare few who not only lives and breathes creative ops, but actually has the title to match. Now, Alicia, you weren't always in creative ops. Could you tell us a little bit about your background and how you sort of evolved and got into creative operations?
Yeah, sure. So thank you, first of all, for the nice warm welcome. Right, I was not always in creative operations. I spent the first, probably close to 20 years of my career on the graphic design side. So that's what I went to school for, and that's what I started out doing, working on the agency side and then working in-house at various companies, always as a graphic designer. Spent a little bit of time running a graphic design business, then went back into working for a brand as a designer, and
Yeah.
then was able to get hired by a company to be one of the first design team members to form a new in-house team for that company. So taking a well-established company, a well-established brand, and developing the first in-house creative team for that company. So I was fortunate enough to be able to be part of that. And after doing the design side within that company for probably around a year, with this newly formed team, I realized that newly formed teams, newly formed departments that are quickly growing and doing amazing work need creative operations. So I was able to take that design role that I had at that company and kind of pivot it into a creative operations role. I was lucky enough to get the support of my leaders at that company to be able to do that. And I've never looked back. That's what I've been doing ever since. It's been, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years of officially working in creative operations, even though I will say that all throughout my career, even when I was designing, I always gravitated toward the project management and creative operations management side of graphic design. So I think I've unofficially been doing it for longer than
Yeah,
that, but
exactly.
officially for the last, let's say, 4 or 5 years.
So and the company that sort of moved it in-house, did they go from you're doing more work with agencies and then bringing it in-house? Is that sort of what was a catalyst for that?
Yep, that's exactly what it was. So that was before I worked there, but yes, before my time there, they outsourced the work to agencies for the most part, and then decided to form this in-house team, which quickly grew into quite a large in-house team, and was really great to be part of.
Perfect. And so let's step back. And I know some people, we always talk about defining creative operations, et cetera, et cetera. It's as you've spoken, it's one of those terms that we think we know what it means or what we feel it means and so on, but it's one of those there's not a hard definition necessarily for it. How do you define it as, for, in terms of how you look at it?
So I have a kind of just a quick definition that I like to use, and I've had to use it a lot of times because I will say that creative operations as a discipline isn't always well known. So I have had to explain it to many colleagues over the years, kind of what it is. And so what I like to say is creative operations brings structure, process, and measurement to creative work. And then the 4 pillars of the creative operations are people, process, tools, and data. So that's my kind of quick one-liner definition of what creative operations is as a discipline.
I'd love to know the data part. I'm going to start there because people usually start with the people and the process and so on, but let's start at the other end. So what are you tracking? Are you tracking throughput? Are you tracking sort of completion times? What is it that you look at in the data? Or is it, do you look at it actually going out to market and how it performs, or is it more the process and how that performs?
Yeah, it's more the process within the teams, and then the sort of the numbers that we're hitting within the team. So just some basic things like how many projects are we doing every month? How many things are requested? How many things are we completing? How many deliverables are we as a team making and putting out there into the world and for use across the business? So those are some of the basic ones. And then another big one that we've really been drilling into for the past, let's say, year or so is the on-time delivery of the team. So that's been a huge push to get all of our work completed on time and out there into the world as scheduled. So that's kind of a big metric that my team's been tracking in the past, let's say, year or so, and really leaning into.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to go a little bit deeper here because I find this quite interesting. So just for context, you are the senior manager of creative operations at Kidde, Kidde Group Solutions. Is that correct?
Global Solutions, yes.
Kidde Global Solutions. Thank you. Yeah. So I don't know you that well, but my wife, she works in construction, mega construction projects. So I was asking, hey, do you know the group? And she's like, yeah, fire suppression systems, etc. You got multiple different brands under Kidde, right? I think there's like maybe 6, 7, if I got that right.
Correct. Yes, multiple brands.
What does your team provide creative content for all of those brands or just specific ones?
For many of the brands, and we're sort of expanding into more currently. So, yeah.
There's obviously multiple brands. I assume the branding's a bit different on each of those. So you've got to like keep sort of tabs on all that and different stakeholders, right? So if you're getting creative and you need reviews or whatever done, or you're getting the briefs, it's going to be from different groups. Is that also how it works?
Yep, that is correct. Okay. We have different teams and different departments and really in different locations that are requesting the work from the team. Yes.
In terms of your time, I mean, you've been there now for a few years. What sort of changed, and what's and we'll talk about a bit about the process and because what I like to understand is like how this measurement, because what we find across many of our clients is that you will send or they'll send creative content out for approval, but often it sits in a pending state, but it's actually been approved, but no one actually clicks the button to say it's finished. But there's this sort of inherent like, okay, yeah, they've like offline agreed it's reviewed, but it sits in the system as approved. So how do you measure that? So I want to ask you about that, but have you changed the process since you joined and moved into this role?
I was the first creative operations manager for the business and for the team. So before I started, I don't want to say there were no processes. Of course there were. That the team was doing work and getting things done, but maybe just not as optimized as they are now, and maybe not as documented as they are now. So just starting out by establishing some processes. What are the rules around the work? What are our ways of working? Documenting that. Training the team on that, training the cross-functional partners on, here's our ways of working. This is what we do. This is how we do it. This is how much time it takes. This is how you request it from us. And then to your earlier point, just within the team itself, my creative and design team, marking the tasks complete to your point of things get finished, but maybe they're not marked as finished, that kind of thing. So we do our proofing within our project management tool. So the creative work gets proofed and signed off on by various partner teams. And then the projects themselves have tasks that then get marked complete so that we have an actual, this project is complete and done and marked off, check the box and move on to the next thing.
Sort of delving and seeing this data that you've been tracking for the last year, has there been any interesting sort of things that you've noticed within that data, the analytics?
I guess the biggest win is something that we touched on already, and that's the on-time delivery of the team's work. So we were tracking not so great on-time delivery percentages in 2024. So a big push in the second half of 2024 and then through this year so far is to really get those numbers to be a lot better than they were. So just lots of communication about it, talking about it. Those numbers get reported up to our leadership and really just making sure the team understands how important it is not only to do the work on time, but to, like we just talked about, mark the tasks complete so that it does, funnel into the reporting in the right way as something that's done and complete and on time. And we've seen a huge improvement just in the last, let's say, 6 to 8 months on the on-time delivery percentage. I'd say that's the biggest win.
And has that been just because you're tracking it and then seeing the on time, or was it just been a big push from the
Yeah.
team to get on time?
I think it's multiple things. So the leadership within the team really kind of pushing within the different departments how important it is, and then talking about it, and monthly team meetings, sharing the data with the team. This is where we are today. This is where we need to be. So just tracking it, talking about it, and then having the support from the other managers on the team to kind of back that up as to how important it is.
So sometimes, I find like people confuse like creative operations, creative ops and project management. They say, oh, it's a project manager role. Why can't a project manager not just come in and do that? No, we spoke about process, and some of those process and project management, but what do you think it's different to a PM, like a classic PM role?
Yeah, that's a big pet peeve of mine, actually. The kind of those two different disciplines are kind of bucketed together, and I do think that there's definitely an element of project management in creative operation management, but I don't think that they're interchangeable roles. So the process and the structure and the data side of things, I think, falls more into the creative operations bucket. And then, the project management of the projects themselves, there's definitely overlap. So I get why, people can kind of mix those up. But I definitely, there's definitely a difference in the two things.
And I feel like there's a tech stack that comes with creative operations. It's not just your PM tool. Yeah, there's the proofing, but sometimes there's other tools as well. Do you have a very sort of simplified tech stack, or do you use multiple solutions for different areas?
Yeah, so we have a few different solutions, I guess, for different areas. Within the team, we use Workfront for our project management tool and proofing. So we have that. We also have a digital asset management platform that we use called Binder. So that the person that leads that sits on my creative operations team too. And then we have several other tools that are being used. Those are kind of the two big ones that we're in all day, every day. And then there's a few others as well.
I've not heard of this before, but I've been told, and I noticed you have a creative ops certificate from Rutgers. Be great if you can tell us a little bit more about this course. What can people expect from it? It's really interesting.
Yeah.
That there's a course now on this.
Yeah, and it's the first that I heard of. It's the first such course that I was aware of. So learned about it through some connections on LinkedIn last fall. And then listening to a podcast that was kind of covering what the course was going to be all about, and who should take it, that sort of thing. So I was lucky enough to happen upon this podcast that talked all about it, and kind of was a promo for it, and thought, wow, this is really for me. So it is strictly about creative operations, and it's kind of a more seasoned professional. So like you're already working in creative operations, and it's kind of just to teach you more about it. For me, it was a way to kind of solidify or I don't know, verify, justify some of the things that I was already doing, but maybe hadn't been taught officially how to do it. Kind of, I felt like self-taught really in the discipline, and I think a lot of people do. So it was a way to say, oh, here's the way, and here's what other people are doing, and here's where you can head to be a little more strategic about your creative operations. So like I mentioned, it's for people who are already in that field, to kind of take their knowledge up to the next level. So yeah, that's through Rutgers. I was able to be part of the first class, actually, and they've done a few since then. I did that class last fall and finished up in December. And like I said, they've done a few since then. It's, from what I understand, seems like it's going really well for the instructors and the students there. So I highly recommend it for anyone who's looking to kind of level up in creative operations.
It's brilliant. Was there sort of one key thing that you would have taken that you like, oh, this is something I didn't know? Because I know it's like, if you do these courses, the great thing about it is like, it sort of justifies, not the right word, but it sort of just confirms what you've been doing. And it's nice to have that. Oh yeah, okay. Because even though you do it, it's working. You wonder always, is there a better way of doing it? So when you do these courses or something, it's like, okay, great. I sort of my gut feel was right. But was this something you went like, wow, okay, yeah, need to think about it quite differently?
Yeah. Maybe not think about it quite differently, but just maybe kind of help me get over some hurdles that I was having at the time. So some of that was around what you and I just talked about, the data and the metrics tracking and what's the right way to capture the data, what metrics should we be tracking and how to report that out to leadership and out to the team. So that going through the course really helped me solidify how I was doing that. So that was really great. And then the other thing that was so fantastic was I was already working at a company. I took this class. I was able to use my company as like the real use case for all of the assignments that we had to do. So it was just real world from day one, applicable to my everyday work that I was already doing. So that felt really good. It was different than, when you're in college and kind of all the assignments are made up, right? Like this was real world applicable information I could use right out of the gate.
So just sort of like segue into, everyone's talking about AI. So how are you looking at that? How's Kidde looking at that as part of the whole, you know, not the business, but creative and generating creative and so on? Is there anything that sparked your interest, or how are you approaching that at the moment?
AI is definitely the hot topic, right? I mean, you can't, it's unavoidable. It's everywhere. It's everywhere and very quickly. So it's embrace it or be left behind, I feel like. It in the creative ops world, I feel like it's extremely important to understand AI, understand what tools are possible to use. I think it's the future. So I think being part of that and using AI to sculpt the future is very, very relevant to the creative operations world. And then, of course, expanding that beyond just creative ops, but just to creative itself. I think there's lots of new and interesting tools that creatives, designers will be diving into that will probably change the way creatives do work.
Has your team implemented anything, or are you still on the sort of peripheral thinking or just looking at it? Because I know obviously you're going to be using Adobe and they've got Firefly and things like that.
We have not implemented officially any of those tools into our team yet. I did actually sit in on a demo of Adobe Firefly a week or two ago, which seems really, really amazing. That was kind of my first glance at that, actually. So I was lucky enough to be able to sit in on that being demoed by someone from Adobe, and it was really, really cool.
Yeah, so something we're working on at the moment is the whole review process back in, and I know you've used Prefetch, but you're probably using that currently through Workfront. And, I was running product at Prefetch, and back in the day, and this is now 2013, 2014, we were trying to work out how to automate the review of the content, because I found like so many people, a lot of the time wasted is, yes, there's the opening of the actual proof. There's how do you get it? How do you open it? And we always try to speed that up, because we found that during the analytics, time from receiving it and opening it, the shorter you can make that, the quicker people get into the content and review it. But then the other pain was when you get a V2, now obviously we've got the compare mode, you can overlay, you can pixel compare and all that, but actually knowing that the comments have been implemented. We've got clients with hundreds of comments on a proof, and they've got teams of 3 that actually go through each of the comments, and just click verify that they've been done, or otherwise they copy them over and say, okay, redo it. So we're looking at that at the moment, but it's definitely a lot harder than I thought it was initially going to be. I thought, yeah, these models can just we can give it like the content and it'll figure it out. But it is the nuances is just amazing. Because you've got these two bits, you've got the whole generative part of AI, and then you've got the predictive piece, and we're like in this predictive part, and it's just crazy. So that's somewhere we're looking at, like, how can we speed that part up? Because I feel like, we got all the chaser emails, people have to review it, but it's quite painful when you have to look at V1, V2. If you go through your process before it goes out to stakeholders, does your team first check a V1 and a V2 and then send it off for review? Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So what you just described, yes, if there are a lot of comments, that can be a very manual and somewhat tedious, like, did we do every single thing that's noted in the proof? Yes, I can relate to the pain of that. Yes.
I just out of it's probably more interesting for me, but I find like a lot of people often think it's like the creative team creates the content and then they share it out to get the reviews done. Obviously, you've got a workflow set up, so you might be skipping this. But does content still go through you first before, or you have a point person before they share it out to other stakeholders?
Yeah. So it depends on the project. And so I have a team
Yeah.
of production designers that ladder up under me specifically. So anything that they do, yes, we call that an initial production review. And before it goes out to anyone cross-functionally, the production team, we review it ourselves, including me. So yes. So and the other departments within my creative and design team, their process is a little bit different. They may, meet in person to meet in person, through through a Teams meeting to go through, share screens and go through the work, and not necessarily put it into the proofing tool and do it that way. So it depends on the work and the department. Could be a sharing of a screen during a meeting, could be putting it into the tool. But yes, we share it before it goes out cross-functionally to kind of get ahead of anything that, maybe there's a typo on there or there's just a minor mistake. We like to proof our own before it goes out to cross-functionalities, before we ask them to proof.
Ziflow is a proofing tool, so and you're quite an expert in this area as well. So, and the thing we find is that lots of companies still don't use anything. They still use email. They still use Teams and Slack and so on. Could you figure? Is there a way for you to do it without, work from proof today? Would you be able to live sort of without that?
No.
Okay, it's
That would
interesting.
be,
Yeah.
if I were interviewing at a company that didn't have a tool in place or wasn't open to putting a tool in place, I don't think I could work for that company. I don't think I could spend time on a
Yeah.
creative team that didn't understand and implement a digital proofing tool. It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make sense. Yeah. Well,
Doesn't.
I agree with you. So,
Now I come from, the old school days of, print it out and walk around to everyone's desk and you have a little slip of paper and you sign off on it, you mark it up. That was a long time ago. Times have changed so much. People are all over the place. Teams are global. It is almost impossible to do it any other way. And it's just not good for records, right? So my company is a fire safety company, right? So there's all kinds of legalities and compliance around that, but even other industries as well. Multiple people usually have to review proofs. There are sometimes regulations around things, like I mentioned, legalities. Having those good records of, this person checked it, this person approved it, is so incredibly important. I can't imagine having to dig through emails from 6 months ago to find if somebody said, yes, this is approved or not, when it came up later and it's, sitting on a shelf in a store and it's wrong. I can't imagine having to dig through correspondence in that way. Like, let me look through my Teams chats and see if this person was okay. Because that's the old way of doing it.
Yeah.
And it's just, it is not the right way for records and for efficiencies. I feel very strongly about this. So it would be a very big red flag.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. People, I've been doing this a long time now. I mean, it's 17 years. I was saying it's like I'm gonna have my gravestone with like online proofing sort of on it. So hopefully I can do something else one day. But I mean, so we still see companies like teams just like reviewing using email, sending around, and I'm just like wondering, okay, so how do you know who's comment, who said what? So someone's like collating the comments, they have to like chase people in, then it's the wrong versions, and it's like, okay, and the records, you're right. I mean, we have a lot of healthcare companies as well as clients, so not pharma, but just healthcare. And again, you got to be pretty accurate. Insurance as well, and you don't want something to go out there that's incorrect. I mean, do you have case, and you don't have to say if you don't want to, but do you have cases where mistakes still do go out? I mean, you've been using proofing at Kidde now since you joined, right? So you sort of can't like compare and contrast, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think mistakes, like minor mistakes, are always going to happen. Of course, we try to get ahead of that as much as possible. But yeah, I mean, it could be something, still goes out into the world and like, oh, there's something that we need to fix on it. And then we have to update it. That does still happen. But I will say we do a pretty great job of getting all the right people to approve things before they go out into the
Yeah.
world. So we like to think of that final due date of the thing as it's final, right? We're not going to touch it again. We're not going to have to go back and change it after. So that's a big one for the team. And yeah, they were already using the tool before I started there or before I started here. So I didn't bring that as a process to the team. They already had Workfront implemented. So I was lucky enough to join a team that had a great system in place.
Otherwise you wouldn't have joined because they needed something. So yeah. Yeah, I have to say, like, as a proofing company developing the software, I'm aware if something goes out incorrectly, it's like a fire drill. Oh, yeah, excuse the pun, but it's literally like, yeah, we just cannot have anything go out incorrectly. And I often find like this is where the human aspect comes in because you've got multiple people reviewing, so the pressure seems to reduce where people start scanning a bit more rather than checking. In detail because I've got 3 other people looking at it. And I'm guilty of that as well. We go like, I'm just busy, really long document. Okay, I'm just going to quickly scan it. I see like 5 other people comment. They must have read this in detail. And that's sometimes the thing I think that can catch us out a little bit.
We put some rules into place a little bit after I started with the company, just in documenting who's responsible for proofing what on each thing. So I think that can help get ahead of the like, oh, there's a lot of other people on here. They're gonna look at it, right? So it'll be, this team is responsible, and this one person from this team is responsible for checking
That's
every
great.
barcode, right? And this person checks the item number. So you still have to do your due diligence to whatever you're responsible for in that proof, even if there's 5 other people on there. So we do try to push for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's we've recently released checklists, which has been actually very super popular. We didn't think it was going to be that popular, but like in the proof now, you can see what items need to be reviewed. And yeah, I mean, it can be repetitive because it's like some of the stuff is just very common. But if you have a website, it's got like specific things like the page title tag. We just refreshed our brand earlier this year. And it's crazy. You go through the website and the page titles are not always updated. And that hurts your SEO. So just having like a little checklist, like just, okay, somebody's got to go check the box. They've checked it.
Yep.
That puts that responsibility on them. Yeah. So having it sort of, having those responsibilities clear is, I think is super important. Yeah.
Yeah. Checklists are great too, by the way. It's one of my favorite things. They give people a checklist, they'll usually follow it. Great tool.
Yeah. It's how pilots fly planes. So, get them up in the air and get them down. So it does make sense.
Yeah.
In terms of advice for teams that don't use any tools, or I mean, what would you advise, like, in terms of the process and then also the sort of the tool set? Well, what are sort of like easy wins for them?
For teams that don't use any tools at all?
Yeah, I know. We could probably say proofing's an easy one and PM is an easy one. But then you look at the process, it's like what we find is like change management's quite hard. So you say like, okay, yeah, just get a proofing tool and it'll get a PM tool. But then people like, sort of like, just go like, okay, but I've got to get my whole team to change. It's because you got the creatives who change. You got, the ops person, you got all the stakeholders who have to change. So, people often ask like, why doesn't a proofing tool go viral? And I'm like, well, the problem is you got so many people involved. You change a whole process, and that's a little bit harder.
Yeah.
So, and I'm always trying to think of like, what's like an easy way to get in? I haven't solved it, but I wonder if you like have any advice.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess a couple of things. So if a team is using nothing, right? If they're just running projects from email and maybe spreadsheets, just like the most basic tool that's easy to implement maybe is a good place to start. So like my old team, when we first started up, we were using Asana. It turned out to not be robust enough for the team. Like it just wasn't enough, but it was a great starting point, right? It we weren't using anything, so we needed something, right? So a very basic tool to just kind of start to get, what are the projects? What are you doing? How do people request? What are your lists of things? And getting those into a tool is great. Now, of course, the proofing needs to accompany that as well. I think at the most basic level, once you are, let's say you're a new team, or maybe a team that never had any tools or processes or ways of working, rules documented, and you're doing that for the first time, I think starting fairly basic and then enforcing it, right? So if you say, all right, Asana is my tool that our team's gonna use that from now on, you cannot keep taking project requests through email. Like, you just have to say no, and your team has to say no, right? No more like, I'm gonna send you an IM and you're gonna do this favor for me. It has to go into the tool. So that is, I think, the most basic of basic things. If you have a rule that says project requests must come in this way, or proofs must go out in this tool, you have to do it. You can't keep doing it the old way, or else people will never adapt.
I find like depending on the person in who's doing this creative ops role, whatever job title they have, I find like often they don't have the authority to go in, push this. They want to do it, but they feel like, oh, I can't tell people. So they still take requests through email, then they go put it into their PM tool. And the other thing we find is that, so when we look at this, when we do our quarterly reviews with customers and we go through their process, we find like, okay, the creative team's using it, they upload it, the PM ops person's looking at it, they review it, and then it stops. And we're like, okay, but what's happening now? No, we take it and we email it. And then we take their comments and we put it in manually through Ziflow. And it's like, why? Because they don't want to change the way they work.
Yeah.
And so we see that still happening. Yeah.
Yeah, I see that too. I mean, you described some scenarios that I still deal with.
Okay.
This one's going to be real quick. We're going to do it via email. It's just a matter of, sometimes you sound like a broken record, right? You have to say it over and over again. It's just a matter of enforcing it, right? And then the team has to not take requests in that other way, right? Like, it takes time. It
Yeah.
takes
Yeah.
repeating often. But yeah, having the support too from leadership within a company can really help to push for that. So having your support of, your direct manager or director, to kind of push for that alongside of me as like the creative operations manager is very helpful. Sometimes you might not get that, and then you're on your own to enforce it, but it's for the best.
Yeah. It sounds like you've got leadership that really supports the whole creative ops, initiative, etc. I mean, it's not always the case. I think you often find like people are like, oh yeah, you've got all these creatives, why don't you just go and outsource it? It's, why I got so many, or super easy. And I'm like, I'm a software engineer by background, and I'm like, creating software is hard, but you coding, it's all integrated. You've got all these pipelines, and some creative is like, it could be video, it could be static, it's like briefs, it's it's so many different things going in to create this one piece of one fabulous guy. It's way hard in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I sometimes I wonder whether leadership sometimes understands that, the actual complexity. I don't know how you feel about it. You've obviously got really good leadership there that does, but yeah.
Yeah. I am very, very extremely fortunate to have great leadership that does get it. So it's not as much of a struggle. I feel like for me, I don't have to explain the why to my leaders. They're fantastic. So I'm very fortunate. I have not always had that where I am currently. I have leaders who really get the operational side and really just the complexities that go with creative work in general.
And for people who want to learn more about creative ops, because it feels like it is getting a bit more, there's more awareness, a bit more content around. But any sort of podcast content and so on you'd recommend for people to follow to go and learn more?
So I'll say that when I first discovered creative operations, it was almost on accident. I didn't really realize that there was a name for this discipline. And when I discovered it, I actually discovered design operations first. Like I heard that term
Interesting. Yeah.
first, and I thought, well, I wonder what this is. And then I started looking into that, and that kind of led me to creative operations and marketing operations. And so I kind of went on this deep dive of what are all of these things. And so the first thing that I tried to do, and this is, gosh, got to be 5 or 6 years ago at this point, I tried to find out, are there any books on this, right? Like, I'm going to read a book that's all about, what is this cool thing called creative operations? Well, I did not discover any books at the time.
Yeah.
Maybe there have been some since, but no books on creative operations. But what I did discover is a podcast that is all about creative operations by our common friend, Nish Patel. So his podcast really took me on a deep dive into what is creative operations? What is this all about? And that kind of just, I don't know, was the tip of the iceberg for me, really, to say, oh, here's this thing that I feel like I happened upon. And I'm very lucky that I did, because I feel like this is where I have been meant to be my entire career, even though I was doing, the design side of things for many years. I do wish I discovered it even sooner. So I guess my one hope is that people like me who are kind of gravitating toward the process and the operations side of creative businesses can find this and discover that this is a discipline, and you get to spend all your days doing really, really cool operational things for great creative teams. So my hope is that more people can discover this and not just stumble upon it well into their career like I did. And I think you mentioned podcasts, so I think Nish's podcast, which still exists, I think it's just called Creative Ops.
Yeah, I think it's a Creative Ops podcast. Yeah.
Creative Ops podcast. Yeah. So that one is
It's a good name.
fantastic resource. Yeah. And he's great. And then there's organizations like Henry Stewart who do webinars and conferences every year. And so they do a really great job of kind of spreading the word for creative operations. And I recently discovered a wonderful group called Inside Out Design Leaders. And so I was able to join that group. And there's a lot of creative ops professionals in that group and senior leaders of in-house teams. It's been a really great space for me to kind of dive in and learn more about creative ops.
That's fantastic. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Yeah, Nisha's podcast is great. I remember when, as Concept Share, they came up with creative operations management, and this is back in 2013. And I remember being a competitor at Proof HQ, and we're like, what is this? And he started with that whole creative operations, the COM model. And so he's been on this sort of mission for a long time. So he sort of saw the future of it. So yeah, I agree. It's a great podcast. And there's great guests as well, like from doing it, like, you like the in-house creative ops. And there's also other guests where they do it at a global scale, where they've got like outsourced or offshored creative teams and how they manage at a really large scale. So yeah, they're definitely a good one to go and follow.
Agree.
Brilliant. Alicia, thank you so much for joining us today. It was great chat, and thank you for all the insights and information.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This has been really great.
Yeah, I'm sharing insights from around the marketing, tech, and operations industries on how marketing and creative teams can get more done together.